how does someone really know if information on health, weight loss, or whatever is trusted, credible, and reliable? That's the topic of today. Now, of course, most people go online, they do a search, and usually whatever's first, they pick that as the most credible or reliable information. And so that's what I did. I actually went online and I typed in the best way to lose weight. And then what I did is I ordered their booklet. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through it. And I'm not going to mention who it is, whatever. I'm just going to kind of go through it. And I want to evaluate it from two viewpoints. One, from my viewpoint, and two, from a consumer's viewpoint. What you're going to find out, there is so much information and data in this booklet, and really no emphasis on the most important things versus all the other stuff that may not matter. What is the most important thing to know about this? Do I have to read the entire article, the entire book, and then do everything? Or do I just focus on one thing or two things? That is a big issue. So what makes something credible? Is it the number of studies that are backing it up? The problem with studies is most people don't read them. They're relying on secondhand information. And also there's a ton of manipulation and bias in the area of research. What about testimonials? I like testimonials, especially if they're video or picture, because that doesn't lie. I think even though it's anecdotal, I think they're credible. Also reviews, they can be faked, but if I see a comparison with two different products and one has a lot more reviews, I'll have a tendency to buy that product over this product over here. And before I get into it, I want to share with you a very interesting observation that I made just being in practice for 30 years. Whatever is touted as the most reliable information, the most credible, the most trustworthy information, especially if it's in the area of mainstream, I usually look in the exact opposite direction. I have found through experience that it ends up not being the most reliable information. And what happens if someone has a fixed idea and knows everything about it, it's almost impossible to teach them anything because they won't look at the information. They already have their mind made up. So when you evaluate something, you have to look at the information yourself. You have to ask yourself, does it make sense? You have to differentiate, is it fact from opinion? So let's go through this booklet. I read the whole thing, and the first thing they're talking about, there is no secret that 2 in 3 American adults weigh too much. The question is why? As it turns out, there isn't one simple answer. Darn it, I was looking for that simple answer. It starts with a combination of genes and environment we live in today. Okay, so right there, talking about genetics, okay? And a little bit later, they said that scientists have found 127 different genes related to obesity, but that's pretty much it. So now the point is, okay, what can you do? If you have a genetic weakness, there's not much you can do. So right there, if it's genetics, and I'm a consumer reading this, I'm like, oh, I guess I just have bad genes, and there's nothing I can do about it, right? And so then they talk about stubborn hormones. They talk about leptin, okay, which has to do with appetite. And then they get into consuming high-calorie foods and too little exercise, okay? I mean, we've heard that a million times, right? We know that going on a low-calorie diet just does not work. So then they get into the power of genetic influences could be up to 40% of your BMI, which, you know what? That's just opinion. That's not a fact. I totally actually disagree with that. But if I was a consumer, I'm like, oh, geez, I might have to go check my genetics there. That could be why I'm not losing weight. So any diet that I do and it doesn't work, I can just blame it on my genes, right? All right, next part here, we're talking about calories and portion control. Again, it's like eating less calories. It says right here, in one study, researchers offered volunteers 4 different serving sizes of macaroni and cheese, okay? When served the largest portion, the volunteers polished off 30% more food than when given the smallest portion. They didn't report feeling any more full than when they ate the smallest size. Now, let me just say something about this right here. This information is just very confusing because what they're omitting is the fact that if you eat any carbs at all, especially macaroni and cheese, you're going to stimulate insulin, and insulin is going to cause hunger. So as far as portion size, whether you have a big bowl of macaroni and cheese or a little bowl, it's still going to make you hungry. And this gives us no good advice or information. And then here on this page, it talks about metabolic syndrome, okay? That's like when you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, you're pre-diabetic, and you have visceral fat right here, but nowhere in there do they talk about what causes that. High levels of insulin. So you're omitting that piece of data. They're talking about you should lose weight to improve your metabolic syndrome. Just like right here, lose weight, keep it off, and maintain a healthier weight. My whole thing is let's get healthy first so you can lose weight, but that's not their motto. All right, next page, we have some tips. Brown bag it at least 3 times a week. Add 2 healthy foods to your shopping list. Rethink your drink. All right, these are all tips that are pretty low on the list of importance. All right, next page, it says avoid ultra high calorie foods. And they're talking about fats, right? Saturated fats. Well, we know fats are necessary to be able to satisfy you. So if you're going low fat, lean, which we'll get to in a little bit, you're just going to be actually more hungry because there's nothing there to satisfy you, especially if you're doing snacks. Okay, this next part, they're talking about strict calorie counting isn't the best strategy. Okay, well, that's good. And then we get over here, it says beating hungry with a high quality diet. So there's a quote here. It says eating processed carbohydrates raises insulin levels, and insulin drives calories into fat cells for storage. Well, thank you. Right here is the most important sentence of the entire book, but there's no other mention of this, okay? So they're actually telling us that, processed carbohydrates are going to raise insulin, and you're going to store fat. But the next part of the page, it's giving you all these carbohydrates you should be eating. It says right here, good carbohydrates. Although processed carbohydrates can lead to weight gain, not all carbohydrates are bad. In fact, carbohydrate-heavy foods such as peas, beans, lentils, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains can be a healthy part of your weight loss. Well, not if you're the average person in America. Not if you have insulin resistance. Not if you are over the age of 40.
You have to stop the Q-tip when there's resistance.
Here's the thing. Even when I wrote my first book, I recommended consuming fruits. This was probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. And I was eating apples every day. Those apples were keeping me overweight. I think I weighed 211 pounds. I'm 180 now. And all I did is remove the apples. I mean, so an apple has like 19 grams of sugar. And then they're recommending whole grains. Not a good idea. All right, next page here, we get into consuming fiber foods. Again, more grains. One of the easiest ways to sneak more fiber into your diet is to increase the intake of whole grains. What about vegetables? They don't mention that. People who on a regular basis consume whole grains tend to have lower BMI and less body fat than those who don't eat whole grains. I would love to see that study, and I'm not talking about a questionnaire study, I'm talking about an actual study. I will guarantee there is no study other than a questionnaire over 5 years. Aim for at least 3 servings every day. For more ideas of boosting your fiber, see page 10. Okay, and then recommending fruits right here. Okay, then we get into lean proteins, okay? You should always have lean proteins, skinless chicken breast, etc., etc. Like the fat's gonna really make you fat. No. When you have lean protein, you actually immediately increase the food's relationship to insulin. You increase more insulin. There's a scale called the insulin index. And the leaner the protein, the higher it is on that scale. So the fattier the protein, the lower the insulin response. So an insulin index is those non-carbohydrate foods that trigger insulin compared to the glycemic index, which is just carbs. All right, so here we have another sentence here. I like this. They go, some research even hints this type of fat may increase the risk of type 2 diabetes. We're talking about saturated fats. I like that. They don't tell you what research, and all they say is it hints. So it doesn't actually come out and say it, so it might influence it. So that's just a way of saying they don't really know, okay? What's more, in late 2015, an international panel of experts convened by the World Health Organization concluded that processed meats raise the risk of colon cancer. Instead, stick with a healthier, low-saturated fat options such as chicken, fish, eggs, tofu, beans, and lentils. Well, wait a second.
No.
What if you're doing grass-fed beef that's high in saturated fat? Isn't that okay? So that's not the type of processed foods that they're studied. There actually is no study that I know about that's actually evaluating grass-fed beef or organic beef. It's mainly processed meats with nitrates and other chemicals. All right, next part, they're talking about power up your morning with, you guessed it, breakfast is the perfect way to start your day on the right track. Here's why. Breakfast can supply lots of foods and nutrients that are linked to less hunger. Well, wait a second. You just went to bed last night and you didn't eat the whole night. You're in this fast. And then you wake up. Many people aren't even hungry. And then you're going to eat. You're breaking the fast. So guess what? If you were just to keep going, you would actually not be hungry, maybe until noon. So I just disagree with that. Okay, so we have breakfast doesn't have to be a major meal. Work some extra fiber into your day by grabbing a couple of slices of whole wheat toast or a whole grain English muffin. Or if you have a few extra minutes, pour yourself a bowl of whole grain cereal. Boy, they're really pushing these grains, aren't they? So it's more carbs, more carbs. What's going to happen is about an hour and a half, you're going to be hungry. Why? Because of insulin. And this is what is missing in this publication. Someone without the knowledge that insulin is like the most important thing is going to read this and just be totally confused and say, well, yeah, I already tried that 20 years ago. It didn't work. And maybe it's my genes, right? All right, next part says the art of snacking. Okay, it says that you may have heard that eating lots of small meals or snacks is the best way to curb your appetite. The truth is, this advice has been greatly exaggerated. Now, on the second part of the page, it's telling you, when choosing snacks, simply follow the same guidelines. Prioritize whole foods with minimal processing and look for healthier sources of fat, carbs, and protein. So they're saying that, you know, maybe snacking is not a good idea, but then they're telling you to snack. Here's a good one. It says, hide snack foods. If you keep your salty or sugary snacks on the kitchen counter, find them a new home tucked away in the pantry. If they're not in your line of vision, every time you enter the kitchen, you'll be less tempted to eat them. That is not true. I know people that will search out these carbohydrates every night, looking for these snacks. And it's not a big deal to go into the pantry and grab them. Why even buy these snacks in the first place? Don't buy them. Keep them out of the house. Or on page 29, you can just, if this doesn't work, you can try cognitive behavior therapy. Okay, so they give you that option. They also give you an option of gastric bypass. So here's the problem. You have this document that gives you a lot of information with some true information, some false information, but they don't tell you what is the most important information. And that is this right here. Base the whole diet on keeping your insulin low, and you will be successful. All right, talk to you later. Hey, before you go real quick, I have a course entitled How to Bulletproof Your Immune System. It's a free course. I want you to take it. And here's why. Here's you. Here is your environment. Everyone is focused on this over here, avoiding your environment. But what about here? What about strengthening your immune system? That's what's missing. This course will show you how to bulletproof yourself. And so you can tolerate and resist your environment much better by strengthening your own immune system. I put a link down in the description right down below. Check it out and get signed up today.